Hey everybody, Bruce Becker up here at Drumeo Studios. I just completed filming a really cool course called Drum Technique Made Easy. And while we were going through the process, it got me thinking about what I could throw to you guys for free and give you a little food for thought. Now I know everybody's sort of busy in their daily lives with a whole bunch of stuff going on, but if I could just grab your attention for a couple of minutes, sit with me and just go through this process. The molar method. This is probably the best technical approach that we can tap into for a better fluidity of movement, a greater ease at propelling the stick. So you may ask, what is the molar method? Well, the molar method was an approach developed by a guy by the name of Sanford G. Moeller. Way back in the day, he was studying parade drummers that actually heralded back to the Civil War times. And through his observations, he noticed they could get a lot of power and stroke out of their positioning. Now remember, a parade drum's at an angle, so they were striking with a lot of power from this direction, but that's how the traditional grip became a grip. Because of the angle of the drum, they would strike from this position. One of Sanford Moeller's most formidable students was James Chapin. Jimmy Chapin, for his whole lifetime, went on around the planet and shared his understanding and teachings of the Moeller method. There's not a drummer around at that point in time that probably hadn't interacted with Jimmy. He was a very empowering figure with a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of detail to how he presented Moeller. So I'd like to share a few thoughts of what Jimmy shared with me and how I've adapted it into my teaching practice. First and foremost, when I start with the Moeller technique, I want to get the element of strike together. When I do that, I want to notice that I have certain anatomical features that need to be recognized. In my shoulder, I have a ball and socket. In my elbow, I have a hinge, and in my wrist, I have a hinge. Using these with the most natural of approach will produce an easy flowing movement to get either a strike or a perpetual motion. So let's talk about the strike. From my shoulder into my elbow into my wrist, I can get a nice easy lift that allows me to create, without any resistance of tension, a nice easy fluid lift, and then I let gravity take over. Now there's a couple key components in how I accept the stick, but that's not really as important as getting the outline of the movement together at first. Once we get there, we want to acknowledge that we're going to have downstrokes and upstrokes. That's basically what we're dealing with. Yes, of course, there's tap strokes, but in this particular presentation, I can lift up and let gravity do the rest. So what I want to be mindful of is that my forearm and my stick bond together to fall to the pad with a sense of ease and get a nice strike on the downstroke. So let's take an exercise where we can enhance the upstroke and the downstroke, and we'll put it at 40 BPM, and I'll play some eighth notes for you. So here I go. I'm going to start in a strike position, and I'm going to play a series of eighth notes, focusing in on each move, the downstroke and the upstroke. I'm in a strike position. I'm going to lift up on the anaphor to start the whole perpetual movement of eighth notes. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. Notice how easy in my hinge and my elbow, I get an easy bend there. Notice that my wrist drops as I lift up my forearm. I don't want it to over-release, but I do want to let it release. 4, and 1, 2, 3, and the timing of my upstroke is all gauged to that eighth note count. And 3, and 4, and 1. So those Moeller eighth notes would be, of course, encouraged to practice with both hands. You start with the right hand, you add the left hand, and that's my starting point so that we get a really good extraction of how the upstroke feels and how the downstroke feels. You could also play it two-handed at the same time, which is a very crafty way to add your left hand to have a crutch or a guide with your right hand. Let me now take a look at playing some eighth note triplets with a nice open fluid bounce. So we're still going to have our upstroke. We're going to kind of walk that stick up to the third of the 3 strokes of triplets. Let's try this at 60 BPM and see how much fluidity and bounce you can get to your stroke without corrupting the upstroke. Here we go, 60 BPM. 1, 2, 3, and leave, 4, and leave. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice I'm getting a nice pivot and bounce on the first stroke, and I'm letting the bounce walk back into the third stroke, so it's nice and easy. Same thing again. I would play this with the right hand lead, I would play with the left hand lead, and I would play both hands together to let that right hand be the crutch, be the training wheel to the left hand. 1, 2, 3, and leave 4, and leave 1. Pushing along, let's try this at 16th notes. We'll stay with the 60 BPM and see what we're up against. Now we have 4 notes as we're playing this. So this will be quite a challenge, but we want to create a locomotive action and let the stick play you. In other words, as soon as you implement the downward thrust, let the bouncing stick carry you back to make a continuum of movement. Let's see how this feels at 60 BPM with 16th notes. 1, 2, 3 E and 4 E and up. Again, notice how loose and bouncy I get that initial strike. So I have a stick that's pivoting over my middle finger primarily, and I'm letting the bounces walk it back to an upstroke. Now I don't have a lot of space at 16th notes, so I want to be very mindful as to the incremental space that I bring to that stick walking back into that final upstroke. 1, 2, 3, and 4 E and up. One more measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. That's basically one of the most valuable technical aspects. There's so many things that you can use Moeller for. It rears itself in almost anything we do. You can identify it in any kind of a rudimental setting, any kind of a roll setting, and I find it to be probably the top of the heap for any technical approach. So when I teach, that's a main theme. As soon as I get there, we really run with it and make sure that it's really well set in anybody's technical studies. So I just wanted to take the time and share that with you guys. So there should be a link on this page somewhere for you to find out more information regarding this great course. I want to be your coach to help you build a better technical approach. So come on in and join in. I hope to see you very soon.